You rack a heavy set of squats, catch your breath for about 15 seconds, and go again for a few more reps before racking it for good. That's rest pause training, a technique that's been part of serious strength training for decades. The pitch is simple. Push a set further than a normal straight set would let you, using tiny rest breaks instead of stopping completely. Whether that actually builds more muscle or more strength than just doing regular sets is a more interesting question than the gym floor reputation suggests. And today we're breaking down what the actual controlled research found. Let's start with what rest pause training actually is. It means taking a set to or near failure, resting for a short 10 to 20 seconds, roughly enough time for a couple of breaths, and then continuing with the same weight for a few more reps until you hit failure again. You repeat that 2 to 3 times total, turning what would normally be a single set into a longer, more fatiguing sequence that still only uses one working weight. The logic is that those brief pauses allow just enough recovery in your muscles to squeeze out extra reps you couldn't otherwise get, without dropping the weight the way a drop set does. A full sequence, the initial reps plus 2 or 3 short bursts, usually takes somewhere around 60 to 90 seconds start to finish. Now here's what the research actually shows about strength. An 8-week study split 28 resistance-trained men into 3 groups: rest pause, drop set, and traditional straight set training, all matched for total training volume, then tracked their barbell back squat strength and thigh muscle thickness. The rest pause group ended up with significantly higher 1 rep max squat strength than the traditional training group. The drop set group didn't show that same significant strength advantage in this particular study. That's a meaningful finding on its own. When everything else about the training is held equal, the extra effort rest pause squeezes into each set appears to translate into a real strength advantage over conventional straight sets. What about muscle growth specifically? This is where things get more nuanced, and it's worth being upfront about the mixed picture rather than picking whichever study tells the tidier story. In that same 8-week squat study, there was no meaningful difference in muscle thickness between rest pause, drop set, and traditional training. All 3 groups built comparable muscle when volume was equalized, but a separate, earlier 6-week study comparing rest pause to traditional multiple set training found something different. Strength gains were similar between the 2 groups across bench press, leg press, and biceps curl. But for hypertrophy specifically, the rest pause group showed significantly greater thigh muscle thickness, 11% growth versus just 1% in the traditional group, though that hypertrophy advantage didn't show up in the other muscle groups tested. Put together, the honest summary is this: rest pause training sometimes outperforms traditional sets for muscle growth and sometimes doesn't, depending on the study, the muscle group, and the training block length. It has never been shown to build meaningfully less muscle than straight sets, but a consistent, guaranteed hypertrophy edge isn't well established either. So does rest pause actually build muscle faster? The most accurate answer is that it can match or modestly exceed traditional training for muscle growth, and it has shown a real strength advantage in at least one solid controlled study, all while taking meaningfully less total training time than doing enough straight sets to match that same effort level. That time efficiency is the core practical advantage, the same one that shows up in drop set research too, since both techniques pack more effective work into a shorter window. So how do you actually do rest pause training? Pick an exercise and a weight you can lift for roughly 8 to 12 reps with good form, taking that first portion close to or all the way to failure. Rest for 10 to 20 seconds, counting it out rather than guessing. Then pick the weight back up for as many more clean reps as you can get, usually somewhere between 2 and 5. Repeat that short rest and mini burst pattern to 2-3 total times. Then treat the whole sequence as one completed set. Isolation exercises and machines make this easiest to execute safely, since there's no risk of losing control of a loaded bar as fatigue builds. On free weight compound lifts, the same technique works and has been used successfully in research, but pay closer attention to form breakdown given how much closer to true failure you're training. People often confuse rest pause with drop sets, so let's clear that up. In a rest pause set, the weight stays exactly the same the entire time. You just take short breaks between mini bursts of reps. In a drop set, you keep going with no rest at all, but you reduce the weight by 20 to 30% each time you hit failure. Rest pause manages fatigue with brief rest. Drop sets manage it by making the weight lighter. In the head-to-head research, rest pause showed the clearer strength advantage, while drop sets didn't reach that same significance for strength in that particular study, and neither technique showed a consistent hypertrophy edge over the other. Most of the research and coaching guidance treats rest pause as a tool for the last set of 1 or 2 exercises per session, not something to apply across an entire workout. A common approach is cycling it in for a focused block of several weeks, particularly when a lift has stalled on straight sets alone, then returning to more standard training afterward. Lifters with a reasonable base of training experience who want to add strength or break through a stalled lift are the best fit for this. Beginners generally don't need it. Straight sets with a gradually increasing weight already drive strong progress early in a training career, and adding rest pauses extra fatigue on top of a body still learning the basics tends to cost more in recovery than it adds in results. Let's run through the most common mistakes. Resting too long between the mini bursts. Once you're resting 30, 45, or 60 seconds, you're not doing rest pause anymore. You're just doing extra straight sets with an odd structure, not actually reaching failure on the first portion, which means the rest of the sequence won't create the extra stimulus the technique depends on. Using it on every single set of every exercise, which burns through recovery fast. And choosing a weight that's too light. If you can easily crank out 20 plus reps before your first pause, you're not training close enough to failure for this to work the way it's supposed to. Here's the bottom line. Rest pause training holds up better under research scrutiny than a lot of gym floor intensity techniques. An 8-week study found it produced greater squat strength gains than traditional training, and a separate 6-week study found it built more thigh muscle specifically, though neither advantage shows up consistently across every study or outcome measured. What is consistent is the time efficiency. Rest pause lets you push a set meaningfully further than a straight set without the extended rest periods traditional training relies on. Used for a set or two on the exercises where you actually want to push harder, cycled in for a focused training block rather than every session forever. It's a genuinely evidence-backed way to add intensity to your training, not just another gym myth. If this helped you understand rest pause training, the full article has the complete research breakdown with the exact study numbers, linked right below this video. Subscribe if you want more videos like this every week. No fluff, just what the actual research says.